How can you ensure you're making business objectives into your KPIs? Welcome to PPC Zone July 2024. I'm your host, Jill Saskin-Gales. I use the pronouns she and her. I'm a Google Ads coach, ex-Googler, and the founder of Inside Google Ads. I created PPC Zone in 2022 to elevate new perspectives and insights in our industry. PPC Zone is sponsored by PPC Live and Inside Google Ads. PPC Live hosts in-person events bringing real people together to solve real problems with real solutions. Go to ppc.live to get your ticket to the next event. That's ppc.live. Inside Google Ads is the training program you need to become a Google Ads expert. Get 20% off your first month or first year with code PPCZone. Go to learn.jill.ca to learn more. That's learn.jyll.ca. Next up in the zone, this speaker is the head of paid media at Evoluted. After nearly 10 years in the hospitality industry, he took the leap into digital marketing, and we're glad he did. Over the last 5 years, he has come from being a marketing executive in a family-run stockholding company to leading the paid media team and promoting positive well-being. Today, he's going to share his perspective with us on how to bake business objectives into your KPIs and account. Please welcome Chris Ridley.
Thanks, Jill, for that introduction. As Jill's mentioned, I'll be introducing how to bake your business objectives into your KPIs. The objective for this 7-minute talk is to teach you the basics to align your KPIs for your marketing channels with your business's overall objectives and their own KPIs, or at least with your marketing department's goals or the internal marketing department you're working with. Sometimes you can't always link it straight to the top, but making sure that those line managers and those key account holders you're working with are all on the same page with you is the next best thing. So before we dive into it, I need you all to ask yourself a few questions. Have you ever hit your targets just for someone to tell you it wasn't good enough and they weren't seeing the returns they wanted? Have you ever been asked to set targets without any context about how much they need it to be or what actually happens after you get that lead in? And have you ever been forced to give targets without even considering your agency costs being factored into it, or if you're in-house, your own salary and costs factored into it? If you answered yes to any of these or all of them like I have, then you're in the right place, and I'll be able to help you make sure the KPIs that you set take all of that into consideration, and in the end helps the business know that they're generating positive return on investment. We have to understand that there are a lot of factors going into these, and that big issues we saw with those 3 questions is none of these were taken into consideration. So let's have a look at these numbers then, and let's get stuck into the maths. Some of the variables important to us are ad cost, so your media spend, outsourcing rates, so that could be the agency you're using, and or your own salary if you are in-house. You've got to make sure that you're covering your own salary, because if you factor that in, that will blow the mind of your line managers and the stakeholders, and they'll really not have anything to say except for wow. Any software subscriptions, this is often overlooked, but if you're using anything like Ahrefs, Optio, any other tools that are third party that have a cost to them, you need to factor them in when you're trying to work out if you're doing a positive return on investment within your marketing campaigns. Also, whether tax or VAT needs to be considered. A lot of businesses normally do pre-tax, but it might be worth just checking with your line manager or your point of contact in agency to see if that's the case. Then also refunds and cancellations. These are often overlooked, but you might get a conversion, you might get a sale, but if you don't know if they've actually kept as a conversion or if they've just pulled out at the last minute, you're still going to be counting that as a success when it wasn't. So getting those rough averages will help you in the long run. Also, profit margin. This is especially important if you are doing e-commerce. Know what the profit margin is. You can then tell your employers or your clients that you are bringing a profit into the business or you can see if you're looking at a loss, what you need to do to improve that. And then we've also got average order value or lifetime value. Lifetime value is usually used for more lead gen and bigger funnels where you can attribute sales back to the first point. But average order values can also work if you don't have those data available to you. And finally, we also have the lead to sale conversion rate, which is particularly important for lead gen. While you might get a lead in, you don't know if they're actually spam and just not a good quality one, or if we lost them in the last minute. So being able to track that will be really useful. And even just having an average for that conversion rate, you can make estimates on how many of your leads turn into actual sales. However, if you don't know your profit margin, like I've mentioned, you won't know if you're running at a profit or loss. So if you're being given KPIs regarding finances and making sure that your work is a profitable campaign, you've got to make sure you know the profit margin, even an average one for the business, to calculate that backwards. So you're probably asking, how do you do this? How do we do all this, Chris? It's great showing us all these different variables, but how do we put them together? And how do we work out what they each are? My answer to you is use your words. Speak to those people in the company that have these knowledge. Speak to the finance team to work out the profit margin. Speak to the sales team to find out how many of your leads turn into sales and how many of them are actually spam. Speak to everyone and anyone you need to get an insight into cancellation rates, refund rates, any other costs, the cost of your subscriptions. And at that point, we can start baking. And with all good baking sessions, you need a cookbook. And this cookbook will include all of the important formulas we need to use to start working out some of these KPIs. For example, we need to first work out costs, and that's overall costs, whether that is your ad costs, outsourcing costs, salaries, and software subscriptions. You need that if we want to work out if we're running at a profit or the return on investment. We also need to work out expected sales for lead gen. This is the number of leads you get times by your lead to sales conversion rate. So if you only convert 20 of them, those 10 leads you got, if you only get 20%, those 10 leads you got are only actually 2 sales. With that, we can then look at revenue, where you're taking this expected sales we've just calculate that by average order value, and then deduct the reduction rate from it. So if you have refund and cancellation rate of 7%, you times it by 0.93 to work that out. And that would take all of those out for you. We've also got return on investment there. As we've worked out revenue, we can then divide the overall cost that we have at the top and -1 afterwards to work out the return on investment. You then can estimate your profits as well. And this is the revenue number we worked out earlier, times the profit margin that your finance team should provide you, deducting all of your costs. And finally, we have the profit over investment, or return of profit. And what this is estimated profit, we've just calculated, divided by costs -1. Like I said, sit down with your line managers and ask them what returns they need to see from your campaigns to deem it a success. Once you've done that, you'll then be able to calculate a break-even point for you. For return on investment, you want 1 as your minimum, that's break-even. For profit over investment, you need a 0. Anything above those numbers are making a profit for you. Thank you for coming to my talk. If you need to contact me in any way or want to connect, here are all my contact details.
Thank you so much to Chris for sharing your unique perspective and insights with us in the Zone. If you'd like to connect with Chris Ridley, you can find him on X and on LinkedIn. Our next event will be on August 13th, 2024 at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. UK, 8:30 p.m. India time. We look forward to seeing you there on YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, or Instagram. To learn more about PPC Zone and our wonderful speakers today, or to apply to speak at an upcoming event, visit ppc.zone. I'm your host, Jill Saskin-Gales. You can find all of us on LinkedIn and be sure to follow me to stay up to date on future events. I look forward to seeing you next time in the Zone.